Story 1. There is an intersection in Chicago at Hoyne and Lemoyne, which is literally what Doodlebob would scream before chaos ensued. Story 2. Used to be Wong Wei but was changed to Wong Street after the signs kept getting stolen. It is where the old Chinatown used to be and it connected two one-way streets. Story 3. Klingon Court and Romulan Court. By a happy coincidence, my city, Sacramento, California, is also where a Star Trek actor grew up. LeVar Burton got a park named after him a few years ago. Story 4. There are two streets side by side in my city called Black and then Blackest. It has always been a general curiosity of mine how exactly some cities decide what to name the different roads. Story 5. We have a small residential road called Burt Road. It is literally named after the man who sold the land to the city. His first name is used because his last name is Road. Story 6. I work as a firefighter and paramedic. There are two locations our dispatchers dislike. One is a road named Uranus Trail. Fires in that area get Uranus Command named by the incident commander. It has the added benefit of being partly a rough dirt road at one end, and occasionally a truck gets stuck in the Uranus mud or dispatch, I'm stuck in Uranus again. We also have a nursing home named Hugh Ash Manor. You know it is Hugh Ash Manor. You practice it in your head, but as soon as you key up the radio, you know what comes out. As soon as you get a call there, your mobile data terminal messages start to light up. It might be other crews laughing at you or your supervisor warning you, but it does not matter. You just cannot help saying it. Story 7. Not a town, but after Colorado legalized cannabis, we could not keep the 420-mile marker on Interstate 70. The Colorado Department of Transportation responded by putting up the 419.99-mile marker. Story 8. In northern Manhattan, there is an intersection of Seaman Avenue and Cumming Street. Yes, they had to move the signs about 20 feet higher because they kept getting stolen. It is also not too far from Dickman Street. Story 9. When our county allowed people to name their roads for emergency services, someone named their road Flicker Lane. But because they used capital letters for road signs, it became Flicker Lane. Unfortunately, they did away with capital letters for private roads, so now it is just Flicker Lane. Story 10. Hooker's Gap cannot keep a street sign up due to people stealing it. Every year, Short Cox wins the vote for best street name. Story 11. Not humorous by themselves, but 12th Street intersects with 16th Street. Meet me on the corner of 12th and 16th. Story 12. My hometown had a street near our house called Morning Wood. That poor sign never lasted more than a day or two. Story 13. You know how you create your adult entertainment name by using your middle name and the street you grew up on? Philip Longwood. Nice to meet you. Story 14. There is Ray Road and a small side street called Ray Lane. They intersect at Ray Ray. Everyone's cousin lives there. Story 15. New York City has a variety. There is Force Tube Avenue in Brooklyn, as well as Tennis Court. Way in the northern tip of Manhattan, you have the intersection of Seaman and Cumming Street. Story 16. When I was in high school, there was a Cripple Creek Road, and I always thought that was a hilarious image. Then I learned it's actually fairly common. Still, it is kind of funny. A whole creek filled with people with disabilities. Story 17. Used to be in a town with a gay street. A business on the corner had a sign right under it that said, "Parking in rear." Story 18. The names aren't funny, but one was closed for construction and the sign read, "Panama closed, detour via Rome." Story 19. The street name itself is not humorous. It is just Pine Brook. Pretty straightforward. It is two words, pine and brook. But the global positioning system calls it Pine Brook. Story 20. The corner of High Street and Stone Avenue, just across the street from the University of Kentucky. Every year they have to replace that sign. Story 21. It's something like Up Enough Drive. It's nearly at the top of a road that goes from the inland side of the mountains to the seaside in Northern California. Story 22. Dingens Road, pronounced Dingens. But my friend, when visiting, pronounced it with a hard G, which has been stuck in my head ever since. Story 23. Subdivision in suburban Atlanta where Token Way intersects with Peace Drive. If you head a bit further down Peace Drive, you will run into Bud Court. Story 24. The town I lived in had a street called Gay. People stole the street signs so often that the town gave up and stopped replacing them. Story 25. Des Moines, Iowa has a forked road. The main road is Beaver Avenue, sometimes known as Lower Beaver Avenue. The fork coming off it is Clinton. Story 26. We have an intersection at Olive and Branch. I always liked that. Story 27. Not my town, but an ex of mine lived in a small town where all the street names were named after what was on the street. Church Avenue, City Hall Drive, Market Street, Gun Club Road, etc. Story 28. Not a street really, but Oklahoma City has the cock ring. When I take visitors there for a laugh, I tell them we are going to cock ring drive. Story 29. There is a road called Street Road in the New York countryside. I thought it was hilarious as a little kid. Story 30. The intersection of Sodom Road and Gamara Road. In southern Ontario, Canada, a county that historically served as a stopover for loggers. Thus, there were mostly taverns and brothels for the men to spend their seasonal pay before going home. One of the roads was renamed in the last few decades. I cannot remember which, but the other one is still official. Story 31. In New York City, there is a Cummings Street and Seaman Avenue in the Dickman section of Manhattan. Story 32. West Avenue is on the east side of town. It was actually named for a former mayor, but most people do not know that. Story 33. I recently found out there are some unusual ones where I live. For example, Equality Road, Humanity Close, Respect Way, Inspire Avenue. Story 34. Weed Road. I only knew the name because I lived nearby. Kids would frequently drive down the road in hopes that the sign had been replaced by the last people who stole it. Story 35. Old Brick Road, Geese Landing, Fish Pond Lane, Portia Drive, Bel Air Place, Austin Healy Drive, Lulworth Mews. Story 36. In my city, there is a neighborhood full of Star Wars names, such as Tarkin Road and Vader Street. I believe another one has circuitry and technology themed streets, including Transistor Lane and Capacitor Court. Story 37. Shinnecock Road. My son thinks pronouncing it Shiny Cock is the pinnacle of humor. It is quite funny. Story 38. On the highway from Vancouver to Chilliwack, about 100 kilometers, in quick succession you pass Popcom, Lickman, and Annis roads. We always pronounce it Annis, of course. Story 39. Cave. It is literally just called cave. Is there a cave? I do not know, but it seems like typical suburbia. Story 40. There is Try and Find It Lane in Henderson, North Carolina. There is also Street Avenue and Nada Park Road near me. I used to live in Tampa, and one road was Gun Highway. It was just a road, not a highway. It was also shaped like a capital H. You could literally be on the corner of Gun Highway and be in more than one location. Story 41. Not my town, but my wife and I were playing GeoGuessr recently. The first map loaded up and we were looking at a church. Our very first spin revealed a street sign that said, Gay Street. We had a very immature laugh about it. Story 42. Not a humorous street name, but my mom moved from 914 Foxwood Drive, Arlington, Texas to 914 Foxwood Drive, Jacksonville, Arkansas. True story. Story 43. Owsley Street crosses Cliff Street. Owsley was my grandpa's name, and he lived off of Owsley Street. I grew up off of Cliff Street. It is a complete coincidence and not humorous, but I always found it amusing. Story 44. My hometown has two main streets, one running north-south and the other east-west. Addresses are numbered from the intersection of Main and Main. Story 45. Gay Way, named long before gay meant homosexual. In the 1950s, gay meant you were having a great time in the literal sense, not in a sexual context. Story 46. Perhaps more confusing than humorous, but I lived in Bucks County where one of the major commercial thoroughfares is named Street Road. Story 47. In the county where I live, there is Booger Hollow Road. In a neighboring county, there is a Buttram, and there is a Beaver Ruin in Metro Atlanta. Story 48. I sometimes mail packages to an address on Licking Hole Road. It never fails to get a laugh from the postal workers. Story 49. Americans who are old enough to remember President Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore will recognize that my town has an intersection of Clinton Street and Gore Road, which existed before their administration. Story 50. We have a street exit off a main highway. It is named Vanalam, and it has a huge sign indicating the Vanalam exit coming up. Jokers will spray paint over the V, so it reads Anal Man Exit. I laugh every time. Story 51. It's not in the town I currently live in, but many years ago, I lived at the corner of Stony Drive and High Street. Perfect address. Story 52. I had to put Hurlbut Street on my bridal shower invitations. Now my friends keep joking that I am having my bridal shower at 123 Puktik Avenue. Story 53. There is one called Valhalla, which is okay, I guess, considering how many Norwegians settled here long ago. A few blocks away is Bob Halla. Story 54. I once walked to 420 East Woodland Avenue. Why is that significant? Because that road is Route 420. Have you ever been at 420 at 420 on 420? Because I have. And guess what? It was not enjoyable. Story 55. I always laugh at 30th and a half Street. It is between 30th and 31st, but they could have named it anything but a number. Story 56. Ennis Avenue should have been innocuous enough, but people who cannot spell kept putting a P at the beginning. Story 57. We have streets like Birchwood, Driftwood, Oakwood, and then in the mix, Morningwood Road and simply Treewood. Story 58. I live near the intersection of Airmont Road and Airmount Avenue, and near Spook Rock Road, which Apple Maps lists as Pook Rock. Story 59. In a nearby town, Fornicary Drive is where the high school boys like to hang out because they think they are going to get lucky. Story 60. Not my town. But driving from Michigan to Cedar Point every year when I was young, we always passed Fangboner Road somewhere on Interstate 90 in Ohio. I'm sure I'm not the only one to notice this. It even has its own entry in the Urban Dictionary. Story 61. Street Road in Philadelphia. I never realized how strange it was until I was giving directions to a colleague who was visiting from Texas. Story 62. I'm an itinerant teacher, so I drive all over. The weirdest ones I have seen are Hoothole Lane, Cheesebro Street, Shamrock Drive, Friendly Lane. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.